The Levinson professor at Loyola Law School. Jessica, thank you. What a day it is. I just want to start by just getting your reaction to the indictment for the first time of a former president.
You know, I feel like I've said this before when things have happened, but it's both surprising and expected. So we absolutely thought that the grand jury was in the kind of final stages because they had asked the former president if he wanted to testify. But it's also still a historic first. We have never seen a former president face criminal charges before. So, you know, again, both expected and historic.
Okay, so let's break this down in as simple of terms. We don't know the actual indictment yet. We do know a lot about this case. We do know that Michael Cohen, the former president's attorney, was convicted because of his connection to case for separate charges. What could Donald Trump be facing? Walk us through what this case is actually about.
So we think that the basis of the case is about the former president repaying Michael Cohen, who himself paid Stormy Daniels right before the 2016 election, not to say that she had an affair with the former president. So if we're focused just on Trump repaying Cohen, we think that's the basis here, and that he incorrectly and in fact potentially illegally logged those payments as legal expenses and said that there was a retainer agreement that he was paying Michael Cohen, and that in fact no retainer agreement actually existed. So that would be the crime of falsification of business records. That's a misdemeanor in New York. Now the question is, how can you kick that up to a felony? Because we expect felony charges. And you can kick that up to a felony if the prosecution can show that the former president intended to commit another crime or intended to conceal another crime. And that's really where there's the fork in the road of what are these other crimes.
Let me ask you about the statute of limitations, because this happened in 2016. It has been, therefore, 7 years. Does that play into this?
I don't think so. The former president brought that up. I believe the statute of limitations would be 5 years likely in this case, but there's an exception if you are, quote, continuously out of the state. And I think it's quite clear that the former president would fall within that exception.
So he's facing potentially other indictments as well for his role after 2020, potentially in Georgia, and for what happened after January 6th as well. A lot of legal strategists have said that this is the weakest of those cases. Do you agree that this is the weakest case, and are you concerned that this case is coming before those other cases?
I may, and yes, I am concerned. So if this case is what we expect, then I think potentially it is the weakest. And that's a big if, because we haven't seen the indictment. It could, for instance, include issues related to the case involving the New York Attorney General, who brought a civil action against the former president and Trump organization for basically lying about the value of properties in order to get favorable tax treatment and better loans. But if this case involves the falsification of business records, and then if it's potentially hooked either to a state crime or to a federal crime, I do think there are a lot of hurdles here for a prosecutor. And if you look at the case involving Mar-a-Lago and the classified documents, the case involving January 6th, and maybe even more pressingly, the Georgia investigation, the investigation in Georgia into election interference, all of those seem like they potentially have stronger through lines for prosecutors. But again, we don't know what's in this indictment.
Right, and you are expecting felony charges. We will see what comes of it. Jessica Levinson, a constitutional law professor from Loyola, thank you so much.
Thank you.